And welcome to yet another episode where we shall be looking at the proposed memorandum of the mathematics paper 1 for the November 2025 for the grade 12s. Okay, so instructions, we have 11 questions that we're dealing with. There's a special answer book that was provided and then clearly show calculations for all of the workings that's being done. Answers only will not be awarded full marks, meaning you have to show your workings. You might have to use an approved scientific calculator, necessary to decimal places. Diagrams are not to scale. All right, question number 1. And they want us to solve for x. And then the question tells us that x plus 5 into x minus 2 is equal to 0. So this is a dot product, meaning that the first answer should be a negative 5 or x should be a positive 2 by equating these ones, meaning that x plus 5 is a 0 or x minus 2 is a 0. X will be a 5 negative or x will be a positive 2. All right, then 1.1.2. We have 5x squared plus 2 is equal to negative 9x. Correct two decimal places. So we know the basics that we have to use the quadratic formula. But before we get the quadratic formula, we have to first of all create a standard equation. So that's going to be 5x squared plus a 9x plus a 2 is equal to 0. And then our A is a 5, our B is a 9, our C is a 2. So x should be a negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. Everything is over twice a. That's a negative 9 plus minus square root of 9 squared. 4 times 5 times 2 divided by twice times 5. Okay, so when I substitute this into the calculator, my first x value is a negative 1,54. Oh, I can have x as a negative 0,26. Remember, the rounding off is two decimal places. Okay, so that is 1.1.2. Then 1.1.3. 1.1.3, they're telling us that if we have 8x squared is greater than 2x. So this is an inequality. Let's put it this side. This is 1.1.3. 8x squared is greater than 2x. So create a standard inequality. Means 8x squared minus 2x should be greater than 0. What's common? 2x is common. I'll be left with a 4x minus a 1 is greater than 0. So either the 2x will be a 0, meaning that x is a 0, or the 4x minus 1 will be a 0, so that x becomes 1 over 4. So x0 and then x 1 over 4 represents what we call the critical values. But now, since we're dealing with an inequality, okay, that is having a positive a, and the inequality is greater. So it's like a parabola in this sort of format. So if that is a 0, and then this is a 1 over 4, where do we find this parabola to be above the x-axis? So meaning that x needs to be less than 0, or x needs to be greater than 1 over 4. So you can represent it in this format, or we can draw the parabola and then do the shading off, or you can use your interval notation. This is a 1 over 4. And then we're looking at that side. We're also looking at that side. Okay, so one of the representations would make sense. All right, then 1.1.4, we have 2 times 2 to the 2x minus 9 times 2 to the x plus 4 is equal to 0. So this is an exponential equation. Let's see how we kill this one. So 1.1.4, they said 2 times 2 to the 2x plus, okay, it's not a plus, it's a minus. Okay, it's saying 2 to the 2x minus 9 times 2 to the x plus 4 is equal to 0. So step number 1, I can use the K method, whereby I'm going to let 2 to the x be, let's use k, okay, t method, m method, y method, anything that you can represent. So we know that 2 to the 2x is the same as 2 to the x, but then squared. So it's going to be like 2k squared minus a 9k plus a 4 is equal to 0. Then if we factor this out to look for the values of k, okay, I'll use the brackets. So if this is a 2k and this is a k, what do I multiply to give me 4? And then I'm going to have a 9, meaning that I can put a 4 here. And then I put a 1 there. And I use negatives because negatives are going to give me a positive. When I open up, the sum is going to be negative. Is equal to 0. So 2k minus 1 is 0. Or k minus 4 is 0. So meaning that k is a half or k is a 4. But then the question is not looking for k. The question wants the value of x. So we need to go back and replace our k with a 2 to the x, okay? So 2 to the x is going to be the same as 2 to the negative 1 because we know that a half is the same as 2 to the negative 1, meaning that x should be a negative 1. Or 2 to the x should be equivalent to a 4, but 4 can be written as 2 squared. So therefore, x will be a 2. So x is either a negative 1 or x is a 2. Okay, so that brings us to the end of question 1.1.4. Then 1.1.5, what a tricky question for 5 marks. Let's see what the examiners really wanted in this part. So the question is telling us that if we have the square root, okay, of the square root of 1 over x, we are adding a 2, and then it should give us 1 over the square root of x. Okay, so already the third is already isolated. So first step, we're going to square so that we get rid of the root. So that kills that. We have root 1 over x plus a 2 is going to be just 1 over x. Okay, then let's move the 2 that side to isolate this other root. This is going to be 1 over x minus a 2. Okay, and then from there, we can simplify this before we do the squaring. I don't know, either way, okay? So if I'm to simplify this fraction first, because I feel like it's going to be easier for me, 1 times 1, let's use the crisscross. It's going to be 1. 2 and x is 2x over x, okay? And then I'll square this side. I'll also square that side. So I'll be left with 1 over x is equivalent to, now I have to open this top part to be 1 minus 2x squared over x squared, something like that. When I open the top part, I'm getting 1 minus 4x plus a 4x squared. Everything is divided by x squared. Okay. So what does that get us to? Okay. Since we have x squared as our highest degree, I can choose to multiply through by just x, or I can alternatively cross multiply. I can cross multiply, but that will not end well. Anyway, it will cancel out. Let's see. So that's going to be times x and then times x. Okay. Meaning that 1 is equivalent to 1 minus 4x plus 4x squared over just a plain x. And then do the cross multiplication again. X is 1 minus 4x plus 4x squared. Someone will say, but why did you cancel the x out? Aren't we killing something? Aren't we killing an answer by doing that? Okay, so let's create a standard equation. Meaning I have to move the exercise, so it's going to be 4x squared minus 5x plus 1 is equal to 0. Let's factor this. Can have 4x and x, because my target is a 5. So this will be a 1 and a 1, and then I use a minus on both sides. Okay. So meaning that my first x is going to be a 1 over 4, or my x is going to be a 1. But since the question was having surds or roots, I have to go back and test. Okay. So what are we testing? We are testing with a quarter and also testing with 1. So if this is our equation, we say 1 over x plus 2 is 1 over square root of x. So let's see if we try with a 1. We know that 1 over 1 is a 1. Square root of 1 is a 1. 1 plus 2 is a 3. And then we're going to end up with a square root of 3. On this other side, we're going to have a 1 over square root of 1, which is a 1. So that doesn't make sense. So this one is not a solution. Okay, not a solution. Let's try with a quarter. We know that a quarter is 0.25. Ne? 1 over 0.25 gives us a 4. Square root of 4 is 2. Now this 2 plus 2 gives us a 4. And then square root of 4 gives us a 2. Does that make sense? Yes. Then, if we have, what is the square root of 0.25? I'm getting a 0.5, and we know that 1 over 0.5 gives us a 2. So this one is the correct solution that the question wanted. All right, then question 1.2, the simultaneous equation. Today they brought it in the Maths Lit format. All right, so calculate the values of x and y if x is the sum, okay, is could represent the equal sign, meaning that x is equal to 2 plus y. Call that equation 1. And then 5 times the product. So 5 times, okay, let me use brackets for times. The product means multiplication of x and y. So that is xy is, okay, we said is a equal sign. 6 more than the square of x. 6 plus x squared. This is equation 2. All right, so let me write it on a proper bigger page and say that if our x, this is 1,2, if our x is a y plus 2, equation 1, and then 5xy is 6 plus x squared, that is equation number 2. So let's substitute equation 1 into equation number 2. So where we see x, we replace it with a y plus 2. So it's going to be a 5y into y plus 2 is equivalent to 6 plus y plus 2 squared. Opening this, 5y squared plus a 10y is equal to 6 plus, and I open this square bracket, I'm getting y squared plus 4y plus a 4. Let me push everything to the left. So it's going to be a 5 minus 1, which becomes a 4y squared. Then 10y minus a 4y, that's going to be a 6y. And then this is 6 plus 4, 10, moving that side becomes a negative 10. Okay, then I can divide through by 2. Okay, meaning that I'll have 2y squared plus 3y minus 5 is 0. Let's open up the brackets or quadratic formula, whichever one works best for you. Then for us to get a 5 and a 3, I can put the 5 here, and then this will be a 1. Since I want a positive, let's see. That's a minus 2y and a 5, perfect, okay? Then from this bracket, we know that y is going to be a 5 over 2. From this bracket, y is going to be a 1. But we said x is basically y plus 2. Meaning that for us to get the x coordinate that corresponds to the 5 over 2, it's going to be, why am I getting a positive? It should be a negative now. Perfect. So it's going to be negative 5 over 2 plus 2. Okay, negative 5 over 2, but then plus 2, which becomes negative a half, or x is going to be a 3. All right, so that becomes the end of question number 1 for the 25 marks. Okay, let's harvest the next 15. Question 2. Given the infinite series, which is geometric, t plus 10 plus t minus 2 plus t plus 4, and so on and so forth, can we show that t is negative 2? Now, since it is geometric, we know that the common ratio, we're going to say ratio 1, and then we're going to say ratio number 2. The common ratio of a geometric must always be just the same. Okay, so if I'm to write this side, we know that the pattern was a t plus 10, then we had a t minus 2, and then a t plus 4. So for me to get the first ratio, I need to divide. So I'll say t minus 2 over t plus 10 should give me the same ratio as t plus 4 over t minus 2, because t3 over t2 should be the same as t2 over t1. Then let's do the cross multiplication. Okay, so this and that, meaning that t minus 2, that's going to give me, let me be disciplined today and write everything. Okay, I'm not going to skip steps. Okay, so t and t is a t squared. This and this is a minus 2t, a minus 2t, which becomes a minus 4t. And then we have a positive 4. On this side, t and t is a t squared. T and 10 is a 10t. 4 and t is a positive 4t, meaning that the total is a 14t. And then 4 times 10 gives us a 40. All right, so let's collect the like terms and leave whatever is not a like term and one is on the other side. So this is going to cancel this because both of them are positives on the opposite sides, meaning that we have a negative 40 minus a 14t is equivalent to 40 minus 4. Okay, so in that case, minus 4 minus 14 gives us a minus 18. Okay, so that is a negative 18t. 40 minus 4 gives us a 36, and then divide both sides by negative 18. All right, then t automatically becomes a negative 2. So that's how sweet those 3 marks would have been obtained. All right, then we move on. We move on to 2.1.2. After getting t as a negative 2, can we calculate the value of t25? And then we write our answer in exponential form. Okay, so since it is geometric, let's try to substitute t with a negative 2 and see. Now our t1, okay, that at 2.1.2? Yes. So t1, remember it was t plus 10. So negative 2 plus 10 is going to give us 8. Okay, and then our t2, remember it is a t minus 2. So negative 2 minus 2 gives us a negative 4. And then t3 is going to be a t plus 4, meaning that negative 2 plus 4 gives us a 2. So what is the common ratio? It's going to be negative a half. So we know that the general term is given as AR to the exponent of n minus 1. Then if our A is 8, we are multiplying it by the common ratio, which is negative a half, to the exponent, I'll say n minus 1. Okay, that is still the Tn. But the question is interested in finding T25. So T25 is going to be 8 into negative 1 over 2 to the 25 minus 1, which becomes a 24. Now, if ever we have a negative number being multiplied how many times? Using the even times, the answer will always end up to be positive. Okay, What does that tell us? I'm now going to express 8 as a base of 2, which is 2 cubed. And I know that 1 over 2 can also be written as 2 to the negative 1. Okay, so 2 to the negative 1. And then I have a 24 there. Okay, then if that's the case, I'll introduce this negative 1 with a 24. So 2 cubed multiplied by 2 to the negative 24. And then when you're adding or when you're multiplying numbers the same bases, you must add up the exponents. So T25 should be a 2 to the exponent of negative 21. All right, so that is how I would have approached that question for the 3 marks. And then 2.1.3, they want us to get the sum to infinity, or the sum of the infinite series. So we know that sum to infinity is given as a over 1 minus r. Our a, we said, was 8 over 1 minus a half, because we said the common ratio is negative a half. So it's going to be 8 over 1 plus a half, which is 3 over 2, and then the answer becomes a 16 over 3. So you can write it as 16 over 3, or you can give it as a decimal to be a 5,333. All right, then 2.2. 2.2. Now, I know people have different ways of how they approach this question, okay? So it's a sigma notation where they're telling us that the sigma of p is equal to k up to 117. In brackets, we have 4p minus 1 is given as that. Or write down the difference between T6 and T14. Now we know that the first term is going to be k. Okay, the second term will be a k plus 1. Okay, and then a k plus 2, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I know that T6, for me to get the T6 from here, I'll have to replace the P with a K plus 5. And then for me to get the T14, I'll have to replace the K with the P with a K plus 13. So let's do that and see. So I'm saying T6 is going to be 4 into K plus 5 minus 1. What does this give us? It's a 4K plus a 20 minus 1, which becomes a 4K plus a 19. And then T14, we are saying 4 into K plus a 13 minus 1. That's a 4K plus 52 minus 1, which is a 4K plus a 51. And then let's subtract this. Remember, it's a T14 minus a T6. So 4K cancels 4K. What is 51? Minus 19. So this gives me a funny answer, which is it a 32? 51 minus 19, yes, 32. So the difference is 32. I know for sure somebody might have had a shorter way of doing it, but this is how I would have interpreted the question. All right, then 2.2.2, calculate the value of K. Value of K. So let's see, since this is sigma notation and it deals with the sum, okay? So what we can notice is that if I'm to look for T1 or the first term, where P is K is going to be a 4K minus 1. And then if I use the K plus 1, so 4 into K plus 1 minus 1, it's going to be a 4K plus 4 minus 1, which is a 4K plus 3. So if we try to subtract this, the difference is going to be a 4, meaning that this is an arithmetic, even by the nature of the format of what is inside the sigma notation. All right, so let's come this side and see that since it is an arithmetic and we said our difference is a 4 from what we just indicated here, that the difference is a 4, then what's going to be our first term? Let's replace, we said 4p minus 1, meaning that the first term is going to be a 4k minus 1. Okay, then we know that the sum of an arithmetic is n over 2 into twice a plus n minus 1 into d. Now, the other question that we need to also figure out is how many terms do we have? Now, since the last term is 117, the first term is a k. For us to get the number of terms, we're going to get 117 minus a k plus a 1, which gives us 118 minus k. All right, so we're going to replace our Sn with the sum we were given, which is 26675. So 26675 is equivalent to 118 minus k over 2, open brackets 2. We say our first term is a 4k minus 1. Is that correct? Yes. Plus the n, 118 minus k, but then we are also subtracting a 1, and then we multiply by the common difference, which is a 4. Okay, so we open up the brackets inside, simplify what is outside, and then we go ahead. So let's multiply by 2. We multiply by 2 here. Okay, so these 2 cancels that. And then 2 times that figure, I'm getting a 53350 is equivalent to 118 minus k into, that's going to be 8k minus 2. We know that 118 minus 1 is going to give us a 117 minus k. Now we are multiplying by 4. So 117 times 4 gives me a 468 minus 4k. Let's simplify that bracket. 53350 is 118 minus k into this and that gives us a 4k, and then minus 2 and that gives me a 466. Okay, then let's open up the brackets on the right. So 118 times 4 gives me a 472. Okay, that is a k. And then 118 times 466, 466 gives me 54988. Okay, and then this is going to be a negative 4k squared, and then negative 466k. We are saying this is equated to the 53350. Put this side or that side. And then let's create a standard equation. Move this one that side. It's going to be a 4k squared. Then this minus and this one. Let's no. We said like terms, ne? So it's the 466 and then the 472. So 472 minus 466 is giving me a 6. Okay, this side it's a 6, but when I move it that side, it's gonna be a negative 6k. And then when I move this one to this side, it's going to be 53350 minus 54988, which gives me a negative as well. That is 1638 is equal to 0. All right, so we have this. Feel free to use your quadratic formula. So your B is a negative 6, your A is a 4, then your C is a negative 1638. You can even divide through by 2. There is no problem with that. Okay, so if I punch this into my quadratic formula, plus minus square root of negative 6 squared minus 4, the A is a 4, the C is a negative 1638. Everything is divided by twice 4. Okay, so the first K value that I'm getting is a negative 39 over 2, or K becomes a 21. Now, since K is more like a position that we're focusing on, from which position, so this is not applicable. Okay, so this is a not solution, so no solution, and then the final answer becomes 21. All right, so that is how I would have gone about with those 5 marks. Okay, question number 3. They're telling us that the depth of a torpedo below sea level forms a quadratic pattern. Okay, that is key, where 0 meters will be at the sea level. And then a submarine tracked a torpedo in 1 second intervals. So the first term is 36, the second term is 71, the third term is 104. Remember, this is a quadratic pattern. All right, then calculate the depth of the torpedo at the end of the first 5 seconds. Okay, calculate the depth of the torpedo, the first 5 seconds. So let's try to write out that number pattern and see. So if we have 36, 71, 104, 4, and 5. So what's happening there? If I use my calculator, 71 minus 36, that's a 35. And then 104 minus 71 is a 33, meaning that this should be, because this is a minus 2. If we minus 2, we're going to get a 31. Okay, you minus 2, you're going to get a 29. And then you plus. So what is 104 plus 31? We get 135. And then 135 plus 29, I end up with 164. So meaning that the depth at the end of the first 5 seconds will be 164 meters. All right. And then can we show that the depth of the torpedo at the end of n seconds is given as this? So they want us to get the general term of this quadratic. And we know that the second difference should be equated to 2a. And then the first term of the first difference should be equated to the 3a plus b. And then the 36 of the first term should be equated to the a plus b plus c. So let's see. So twice a is negative 2, meaning that a is a negative 1, which corresponds to what we were given here. Perfect. Then we're saying that 3a plus b should be equivalent to 35 if a is a negative 1. So 3 times negative 1 plus b, meaning that we're going to have to move this negative 3 to that side. B is a 35 plus 3, which becomes a positive 38. Perfect. Then lastly, a plus b plus c should give us the first term, which was a 36. So if your a is a negative 1, your b is a 38 plus c gives us a 36. When you simplify this, it's going to be a 37 plus c is a 36. Move the 37 that side. C becomes a negative 1, meaning that the Tn is indeed negative n squared plus 38n minus 1. All right, then 3.3, calculate the maximum depth that the torpedo reached. So when we ask for maximum length, they are technically asking for the turning point value. Okay, at what point, or the y value of the turning point, because this is more like a parabola that is having this sort of a shape. So for us to get that maximum, you can find the first derivative. It's entirely up to you. Okay, or you can use the x is equal to negative b over 2a. We shall still get the same answer. So let me use this because it seems quicker. Okay, negative b over 2a. So our b was a 38, so negative 38 over twice the a is a negative 1, meaning that the maximum is at a position of 19. So the question wants the maximum. So we need to look for T19. Negative 19 squared plus 38 times 19 minus 1. All right, so negative, we said 19 squared plus a 38 times 19 minus 1. So I'm getting 360 meters. So this is the maximum height that the torpedo will ever reach. All right, then after how many seconds was the torpedo at 104 meters below the sea level for the second time for 2 minutes, or for 2 marks, sorry. Now we know that it was at 104 after 3 seconds. Not so. So at 3 seconds, we have this. Now the question is going to be, what is, if we look at this as a parabola, I'm just thinking of a quicker way to get this without necessarily doing the substitution, because the marks simply are not enough. Okay, so if this is 104 after 3 seconds, which means we expect to have another 104 on this other side. But we said that the turning point happens at a 19, okay, position 19. So what is the distance from here up to here? So 19 minus 3 is a 16, okay? And if that is true, that this is 16 units, meaning that we also must have 16 units on this other side. So what is 19 plus 16? Okay, 19 plus 16, we end up with 35 seconds. So at 35 seconds, that's when we have the second 104. Alternatively, you can substitute into this equation and say negative n squared plus a 38n minus 1 should give us 104. Collect the like terms, okay. You're going to get negative 105 is equal to 0. When you solve this, you're going to get your n as a 3 or n as a 35, whichever way. All right, so that is question 3. Okay, question number 4, which is the functions. They're telling us that the graph of f of x is given as the log 1 over 3x. Okay, it's drawn for us. And then point A is having 3 and t lies on the graph of f. 4.1 for 1 mark. They want us to get the value of t. Value of t, which is the y value, let's just do the substitution. So meaning that y, or rather t, because t is representing the y. So t is going to be the log 1 over 3 with an exponent of 3. When you substitute this into the calculator, okay, 1 over 3 with a 3, meaning that our t is a negative 1. Okay, then they want us to write down the coordinates of A. Where do we find A? A happens when the y is a 0. Okay, so there are 2 ways of doing this. Number 1, if I try to express this in the exponential format, it will simply give me something like this. Okay, because this is the log format, and then this is the exponential format. So if y is a 0, anything to the exponent of 0, because 1 over 3 to the exponent of 0 should give us a 1. So this is going to be 1 and 0. All right, then 4.3, they want us to determine the equation of the inverse in that form. Now we've already swapped this around from the log form into the exponential form, meaning that our inverse is going to be, let's switch this around so that y becomes 1 over 3 to the x. So that is what the question simply wanted, 1 over 3 to the x. And then write down the equation of the asymptote of the inverse. Now, if the equation of the asymptote of this one is x is equal to 0, meaning that the inverse, the asymptote is going to be y is equal to 0. And then they want us to draw. Okay, draw the inverse on the set of axes provided, the answer book. All right, so I omitted out the answer book, but let me try to sketch it here so that people can see. So the only thing you have to do whenever you're plotting an inverse, just try to mimic these points. So it's a 3 and negative 1. This is a 1 and a 0. So let's flip this around and say 0 and 1. Okay, then it's going to be negative 1 and then a 3, which is somewhere there. And now since our b value is a fraction, so the graph should be a decreasing graph. So it should be moving in that sort of direction. Okay, so that is the inverse graph. I've just decided to draw it then. Then 4.6, they're telling us that the graph of H is obtained when the inverse is translated 5 units to the right. Okay, determine the y values where x is greater than 4. So our focus is the inverse. Okay, but what do they need when x is a 4? So let's see. If we move this graph 5 units to the right, it simply means that this -1 here is going to be our present 4, okay, at that point. So since it is moving horizontally, the graph is going to be somewhere there, whereby this y value must be maintained, okay? So the new point will be a 4 and a 3. Now the question is asking us for the y values. Determine the y values of h where x is greater than 4. Okay, meaning that if x, or if we're looking at the right-hand side of 4, what is going to be the y values? Or what will be the y values? So the maximum y value is going to be a 3. But remember, this graph is tending towards this asymptote. Okay, so it's between 3 and 0. So there is no equal sign there. So we're going to say that 0 less y and then less 3. Okay, so that is how I would have approached that question as well. All right, question number 5. Okay, they're telling us that the graphs of f of x, we know that f of x is a parabola, and g of x, which is a hyperbola, are drawn. P is a turning point, okay, of f and the point of intersection, the asymptotes of g. The graphs intersect at this point, perfect. M and T are the x-intercepts of f and g respectively. Then write down the domain of g. So we know that at this point where the asymptotes are meeting, it's going to be a positive 3. And then this is going to be a positive 8. So P is the same as 3, 8. So when you're talking about the domain of this hyperbola, domain is the x values. Okay, so you're going to say that x needs to be an element of real numbers, but x should never be a 3. Then they want the range of f. So since we identify that our P is a turning point, yet is the intersection of the asymptotes, the range is basically the y values. So y values for which f is valid, we're going to say that y needs to be less. Okay, y is less or equal to 8. Alternatively, someone can say that a negative infinity is less or equal to y, less or equal to 8. For people that love using the brackets, you have to use the square brackets. And then y is an element, something of the sort. All right, 5.3, determine the values of x for which the g of x is below or equal to the f of x. So where do we find the g of x to be below the f of x? So we see that at this point, where x is a 5, okay, that is where the graphs are equal, okay? And then if it is below, then this is the area of interest. So between 3 and 5, okay? So I'll write down and say that 3 is less x is less or equal to 5. And then where do we find the graph of f to be below 6? Okay, we know that f is the is the parabola. Ne? Where do we find it to be below 6? So if I'm to look at it nicely, the 6 is here, point D, which is the y value. So if we were to draw just a line in that sort of direction, So the graph is above 6 between this point and then that point. But then it's going to be below the 6 level after the 5. But we also need to find this point. So if this is a 3, this is a 5, meaning that we have 2 units there. So what is 3 when we move 2 units backwards? It's going to be just a 1. So 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 2 gives us a 5. So how do we answer this? So below 1, the graph is going to be less than 6. And then above 5, the graph is going to be also below that. So we're going to say that x needs to be greater than 5, or x needs to be less than 1. Okay, so that is how 5.3 would have been answered. Then 5.4, can we show that the equation of the parabola is given as this? This question is sweet because they give you the answer and then you have to figure out how you get that answer. So what we have to do is that with this question, I have already identified the point P, which is the turning point. Okay, then we have another point D, which can help us to determine the A value. Now we're going to use the turning point method, okay, for the parabola, meaning that our y should be the same as A into x, remember, plus minus b squared and then plus q, something like this, something of the sort. So substitute y is equal to A into x. This is a 3 positive. We're going to switch it to a negative squared. And then the y value of the turning point is 8. Okay, then let's use 1 point, which is 5 and 6, to get the value of A. So if y is a 6, A into x is a 5. That's going to be a 5 minus 3 squared plus 8. Let's move the 8 that side. We're going to be left with a negative 2 is equal to 5 minus 3 is a 2. And then 2 squared gives us a 4. Divide both sides by 4, meaning that A is negative a half. Let's see. Is that what it says? Perfect. We have negative a half. Then what is left for us to do is just substitute this back and then open up the brackets. So negative a half into x minus 3 squared plus 8. Okay, so let me open this up. Negative a half into, opening this bracket, we have x squared minus 6x plus 9 plus 8. So it's a negative a half x squared, negative a half and negative 6. I'll get a positive 3x. And the negative a half times 9 is a negative 9 over 2 plus 8. Simplify this. Okay, and then we get our, so negative 9 over 2. We are adding 8. We get a positive 7 over 2. So that is how I would have gone about with that question. All right, then 5.5, they want us to get the length of MT. So from here up to there. So this question is indirectly asking us to determine the x coordinates or the x-intercepts of the two graphs. Okay, so since we already have the equations, I can come this side and write and say, because this is going to be 5.5. Okay, so with 5.5, the first equation of f, we say the negative a half x squared plus 3x plus a 7 over 2. Okay, and then the g of x that we were given is basically a negative 4 over x minus 3 plus 8. Okay, so we know that for the x-intercept, y must be a 0. So negative a half x squared plus 3x plus 7 over 2 is equal to 0. Multiply through by negative 2, because I want to get rid of the denominators. So this is going to be x squared. This is going to be a negative 6x. This is going to be a negative 7 is equal to 0. When I factor this out, It's going to be x and x. How do I get a -7? So it can be -7 and then a +1. Okay. So this bracket will give me x as a 7, or x should be a -1. But if I'm to look at my graph, okay, remember we're using the parabola. So our focus is the M, which is on the negative side. Okay, so the coordinates of M will be -1 and 0. Then let's get to the hyperbola and do the same thing. Okay, replace the y with a 0. So that's going to be -4 over x minus 3 plus 8 is a 0. Move the 8, so -8 is equivalent to -4 over x minus 3. So it's up to you. You can divide by the negative or just multiply both sides by the bracket x minus 3, then x minus 3, so that we get rid of the denominators as well. Meaning that -4 is the same as -8x plus a 24. Let's switch positions, okay? So this 24 comes this side, it's going to be a -28 is equal to -8x. Divide by -8 over -8. So what is 28 over 8? That becomes a 7 over 2. So it's just one value. So meaning that this is a 7 over 2, this is a -1. Now, since we're looking for the distance and it is just along a straight line, let's just do the subtraction. The bigger number minus the smaller number. So that's going to be 7 over 2 plus 1. Okay, so 7 over 2 plus 1 gives me 9 over 2 units. Okay, or someone can say it's a 4,5. Then 5.6, they want us to get the equation of the tangent to the graph of f at D. Okay, so at this point D, they're telling us that there is a tangent, which tangent should be moving in this direction. I don't know whether that direction or any other direction. But what we need to know is that for us to get the equation of the tangent of any graph, we need to start by finding the gradient at that point. How do we get the gradient? First derivative. All right, so the first derivative of this precious equation of ours, the 2 cancels out, so we're going to have a -x plus a 3. So this is just the equation that we use to get the gradient. But our x is a 5. Okay, so it's going to be a -5 plus a 3, meaning that our gradient is going to be -2. So I think I'll be right by imagining that the gradient is, or the line is moving in this direction because the gradient is negative. Then we're going to use point D, which is 5 and 6, to get the equation. So from y minus y1 is equal to m into x minus x1. So using 5 and 6. So it's going to be y minus 6 is equal to -2 into x minus 5. Open up. That's going to be a -2x. That's going to be a 10. When this one comes that side, it's going to be a +6. So the equation is -2x plus a 16. Okay, so that is what I end up with when it comes to question number 5. And that brings us to the end of question number 5. All right, question number 6. The graphs, the g of x, which is just a straight line because it is x plus c, and then f of x, which is a over x plus b plus q, which is the hyperbola, drawn below. Then graph G and the vertical asymptote, they intersect at the x-axis, okay. And then 6.1, can we write the coordinates of the x-intercept of G in terms of P? Now, we know that this would represent a P, and then this would represent a Q. Okay. So what we're going to do, we know that at the x-intercept, y is what? y is a 0. So the coordinates will just be P and a 0. All right, then 6.2, graph G intersects the horizontal at a point when x is a 1. Okay, so at this point, we have a 1. And then the graph F when x is a 3. So somewhere here, we have a 3. Graphs F and G also intersect at the y-axis here. We know that x is a 0. Determine the equation of F for 5 marks. Wait. Okay, let's see. How did people approach this question? Okay, so we said this is a P and 0. Okay, and then let's do. Okay, so we had our equations. Maybe I should jot it this side so that I don't really interfere. Okay, so one thing we need to know is number one, let's start with the points of intersection. Okay, when graphs intersect, it simply means that the graphs are equal to each other. Okay, so what does that mean? I'll say at the y-axis, okay, or at the y-intercept, what is the g? Meaning that our x is a 0, meaning that y is the same as c, okay? Then if I look at f, still at the y-axis, where x is a 0, I know that y is going to be a over 0 plus p, which is a p, plus q. Okay, that is one other thing that I need to also look at. Now, if I compare these two, remember the two equations must be equated to each other. So where there is y, I'll put a c, meaning that c is the same as a over p plus q. I'll call that my equation 1. Okay. Then I have to still use the same aspect of the intersection and equate the two graphs. So if I originally equate the two, meaning that x plus c is the same as a over x plus p plus q, okay? But our x is a 3 here. In this case, the x was a 0. That's why we were left with this, okay? So if x is a 3, we're going to end up having a 3 plus c is equal to a over x plus p plus q. Okay, we can call this equation number 2. Then we need to simplify equation 1 and 2. How do we do that? We just need to substitute. Do we need to do that? Yes, we can do that. But before we do that, I just want us to also look at this point of 1. Okay, we know that the asymptote here, the equation of the horizontal asymptote is y is equal to q. Okay, but this asymptote is meeting up with a straight line, which is y is equal to x plus c. What does that mean? That at this point of intersection, the two will be equivalent to each other, meaning that q is the same as x plus c. But what is the x value at this point? It's 1, meaning that q is the same as 1 plus c. All right, so then from there, we can make C the subject and say C is Q minus 1. Let me call this equation number 3. So I have equation 1, equation 2, and then equation 3. I believe these 3 equations should be able to help me get what I'm looking for. So I'm going to substitute. Okay, let's do this side and say if we substitute equation 3 into equation number 1, that's going to be Q minus 1 is equal to A over P plus Q. So you can see that both Q's are positive, so this Q is going to cancel that Q. When I try to cross multiply, I'll end up with A being a negative P. Okay, so if A is equivalent to a negative P, what does that tell us? I can call that equation number 4, and then I'll substitute or replace this equation where I see the others, okay? Then I can go back to this equation 2 and substitute equation 3 into equation 2 first. So it's going to be a q minus 1, but we are adding a 3 there. Should be equivalent to a over x plus p plus q. Then this q again is going to cancel with the q, okay, because both of them are positives, meaning that we left with a 2 is equivalent to, but we said our a is the same as a negative p. So where there is a, let me put a negative p. And then which x value are we looking at? Why didn't I change this, guys? Why didn't you tell me that the x was a 3 here? Okay, so this is a 3. Let's not forget that. Okay, so I have just an equation that is having just p's alone. So cross multiply, meaning that 2 times 3 gives me a 6, 2 and p gives me a 2p, and then this is a negative p. Let's move this one to that side. 6 is going to be a negative 3p, divide both sides by negative 3, which means p is a negative 2. So if p is a negative 2 from the equation, okay, like x minus 2, here is a positive 2, which makes sense. Okay, but now, since we say that a is a negative p, it simply means that our a is going to be a negative and a negative, which means a is a positive 2. And then we need to find c. We said c is q minus 1. Do we have q? We need to find q as a matter of urgency. So we know that which equation are we going to use to find the q? But okay, before we get the q, we can find the c. Are we able to find the c? Which equation are we going to use to find the c value? So I think we can just do the substitution into the original equation and use it, okay? So remember it was a, which a we said is a 2. Okay, let's do that and say 2, x minus 2 plus a q, which we don't know. So let's use the, is there any other point that we know? Which point is that? Are we able to find c? Because what we found is this 2, okay? And we know that at this point, it's a 2 and 0. Okay. And then what else did we find? This is a 3, but we don't know what the y value is at that point. But one thing we know is that the gradient of this is a 1. Okay. So if the gradient is a 1, we can find one value there. Okay, so if I have this as a 3 and a y, because I need 1 point at least to get my q value. So I'm going to say that y minus 0 over 3 minus 2 must give me a 1. Okay, so this is a 1, meaning that the y value is a 1. So this point here is a 3 and a 1. Or we can find another point somewhere there and then look for the value of c and then substitute. So if 3 and 1 is what we're using, so it's going to be 1 is equal to 2 over 3 minus 2 plus a q. Okay, so that's 1 is equal to 2 over 3 minus that is, so meaning that we're going to move this. So q is 1 minus 2, which is a negative 1. So therefore, the equation of f is going to be 2x minus 2 together with a minus 1 is, I think that makes sense, the minus 1 down here. Okay, so that is the equation that the question technically wanted. Okay, then describe the transformation that G must undergo to become the axis of symmetry. So we know that the axis of symmetry must be passing through the points of intersection. Okay, it should be passing through that point there. Now remember, the equation of this graph is x plus a c, meaning that the gradient is already a 1, meaning that the only thing that can be done is just to drop this from there up to here. So if this point that we found was a 2, and then this is a 0, so the graph needs to shift 2 units down. So we are saying shift G 2 units down. So that is the transformation that must take place. All right, question number 7. They're telling us that a travel company informs Robert, okay, that a holiday to a certain destination costs 40,000 now. The company predicts that the cost of the holiday will increase by 7.8% per annum. What will this holiday cost in 5 years' time? So this is basically compound interest because of inflation. So 1 plus I to the exponent of n. So that is 40,000 into 1 plus 0.078 to the exponent of 5. Okay, so when I punch this in the calculator just to be sure, 0.078 to the exponent of 5. Why are you saying 5? Okay, so what I'm getting is 528. No. It's 58, not 528. It's 58,230,94 rands. All right, so that is what I'm getting with this question of 7.1. Then 7.2, they're telling us that Sarah opened a savings account that paid interest rate at 5.8% per annum and compounded quarterly. She deposited the 2.3 into the account on the 1st of January 2020 and continued to make such deposits of 2.3 at the beginning of each quarter thereafter. She made the last deposit on the 1st of October 2025. Calculate the accumulated amount in the account on the 1st of January 2026. So since it's a savings, we know that we're going to use the future value formula. Okay, let's put it aside. It's 7.2. Yes. So we know that our x is a 2.3. Okay. Our n, we don't know yet. I'll just put a pause there. This is a 5.8 compounded quarterly. Okay. And then what else do we have? 1st January 2020 and then 1st October 2025. So we need to know how many years are they? Okay, this is 1st, I'll say January 2026. But there is October there, okay? I'll say 1st October 2025. Okay, so from 1st January, I know that 1st January 2021, 1st January 2022, 1st January 2023, 2024, 1st January 2025. So that's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Okay. Then the 5 years and how many months? Because we're looking at 1st October. When you look at the 1st October and it's being compounded quarterly, let's see. 5 years will have how many quarters? How many quarters are there? So it will be 20 quarters. Then we know that from Jan up to March, that's a quarter. And then from March to June is a quarter. And then June, July, August, September is also another quarter. So 1, 2, 3, and then the next one will be like December. So since this guy is depositing on the first of every month, or the lady, at the beginning of each quarter. So September is when the third quarter ends, and then the fourth quarter starts in October immediately. So meaning that this lady made a full whatever payment of 4 quarters for 2025. It's going to be catered for. But now, since we want the payment for all the amount in the account on the 1st of January 2026, then that is slightly a different quarter that we're not going to discuss, but we shall add it at the end of the period. So we're going to say that we have 24 periods there. So the future value is X into, we have 1 plus I. Oops, that is wrong. We're saying X, open brackets, 1 plus I to the exponent of n minus 1 over I. Okay, so this is going to be 2.3. This is 1 plus 5.8% over 4 to the exponent of 24 quarters minus 1 over 5.8% over 4. Then this amount needs to grow for just one more quarter, which is 5.8% over 4 to the exponent of 1. Okay, so when I punch everything into my calculator, let's see if it's going to give us something that is reasonable. So 1 plus 5.8%, we are compounding it quarterly. So over 4, we say to the exponent of 24 minus 1. Okay, 5.8% over 4. Okay, so this bracket alone gives me something like 6.546 something. Yeah? Then I need to multiply. We said plus 1 plus 5.8%. Okay, over 4 to the exponent of 1, because we are approaching another quarter. So the total I'm getting is 66,411,595, which is like 60. So that is what I obtained. I don't know what you guys have on your side. All right, 7.3, the bank granted Rajesh a loan of 900,000 on the 28th of February at an interest rate of 6.8% compounded monthly. But Rajesh was unable to make the first 3 payments. He made his first repayment of 10,000 on the 30th, of June. He continued to make the monthly payments of 10,000 at the end of each month thereafter. Question is, how long in completed months will it take for Rajesh to pay the loan from the time it was granted? Meaning that the answer we get, if it's a decimal or what, we just need to round it off. Okay, so we know that since it's a loan, we're focusing on the present value. But for the first 3 payments that we missed, the money must grow. Okay, so we're going to say that the loan amount after 3 months, it's going to be 1 plus I to the n, so that's going to be 900,000 into 1 plus, the interest rate was 6.8 monthly to the exponent of 3 months. Okay, when we punch that into the calculator, this is 1 plus 6.8%. Oops. Okay, that's percent over 12 to the exponent of 3. I'm getting 915,386,86 rands. Okay, now this is now the new loan amount that this guy should consider paying. So since we're looking at the present value, we know that the formula is X plus into 1 minus 1 plus I to the negative n. Everything is over I. So let's do the substitution. So 915,386,86 is equivalent to 10,000 into 1 minus 1 plus 6,8% over 12 to the negative n. We're dividing this by the 6,8% over 12. So feel free to do your magic of how you're going to simplify this. So you can start by dividing both sides by the 10,000, meaning that we're going to have a 91,5387. And then I'm going to multiply it by the 6,8% over 12, should give me 1 minus. When I simplify that bracket of the 1 plus 6,8% over 12, I'm getting a 1,0057. Let me leave it at that. Okay, so when I multiply the left-hand side, we have 91,5387 multiplied by 6,8% over 4. I'm getting 1,5562. Okay, so then I have to move this one to that side. Does that make sense? It should make sense. Okay, so it's going to be 0,5562 is equal to the negative 1,0057 to the exponent of negative n. And then we need to introduce the logs on both sides. Okay, so it's going to be the log of 0,5562 is equivalent to this negative, and that negative will multiply and we get a positive. So it's going to be n, the log of 1,0057. Then since we're looking for n, is that 7.3.1? Yes, but the space is finished. Okay, it's fine. So n is going to be the log of 0,5562 over the log of 1,0057. Alternatively, you can use that log AB and still get just the same thing. So if I use this 0,5562, okay, I'm dividing it by the log of 1,0057. Something seems to be off, like off. I don't know where I got it wrong, but let's see. We said 915,386, that. How much is the monthly payment? Is 10,000. Okay, so when we divide 915,386, divided by 10,000, we get the 91, that. And then when you multiply by the 6,8% over 4, that gives me the 1,5 compounded monthly. Okay, which is okay, seems legit. Is it the formula that I messed up with, or? I think my problem is with the multiplication here and the division, okay? So if, let's say we multiply first before we divide, because something is not adding up. So it's 915,386,86 multiplied by 6,8 over 12. And then we divide by the 10,000. It's going to give me 0,5 something, which is, I don't know why it should give me something of the sort. So 915,386,86, I'm getting 0,5, okay, 187. And then when I subtract, okay, let's say when you subtract we're getting a negative 0.4. I think that would make sense. Would make a lot of sense. Negative 0.48113. So meaning that this negative and a negative will become a positive, and then this becomes a negative 0.4813, 0.4813. Let's try that and we see what n value. We must get a positive n, guys. We can't end up with a negative answer. So 0.4813, we're dividing it by the log of 1.0057. All right, I think it gives me something positive. So since it's negative n, it's going to give me a negative 128.6573. So n is approximately 128.65. I don't know how true this is. So meaning that Rajesh is going to use approximately 129 payments. Okay, 129 payments. If I use the calculator directly, I'm ending up with 129, something. So I don't know, maybe the breaking down of stuff is causing hiccups. All right, then let's move on. 7.3.2, calculate the value of the final payment. So we know that the final payment is not going to be full, since we are saying that it's going to make 128 full payments. We need to subtract this from 128. Okay, let me keep the 7.3 here so that I look for the outstanding balance. So the n is going to be 0.6573. I'll just keep the number or the value and then find the answer. So it's going to be 10,000 into, we're saying 1 minus 1 plus 6.8% over 12 to the exponent of negative 0.6573. Okay, over 6.8% over 12. All right, so let's see. That's 10,000 into 1 minus 1 plus 6.8%. We're saying over 12 to the exponent of negative 0.6573 over the 6.8% over 4. Okay, so this value is giving me something a bit small again, which is going to be like 2,180.76 according to the calculation that we have used here. I don't know whether that is reliable enough. Nope, it's not. It's supposed to be over 12, not over 4. So meaning that the answer should be a 6.542.29. Okay, so that's what I'm having. Answers between 5,000 or 4,000 and 6.5. I'm not sure, guys. Okay. Okay, then question number 8, they want us to use first principles. So we know that from the first principles, we know that the limit as h tends to 0, f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So this is f of x, and then our f of x plus h is going to be negative 2x plus h. Okay, so limit of negative 2 into x plus h plus a 3. We are subtracting negative 2x plus 3. Everything is divided by h, but h tends to 0. Opening up that, we have a negative 2x minus a 2h plus a 3. Negative is a plus 2x minus 3 over h. So limit as h tends to 0. Cancel out what needs to be cancelled. So this cancels that. The 3 cancels the 3. And then we just left with the limit as h tends to 0 of negative 2h over h. Cancel the h. And then the final answer is just a negative 2. Then if g of x they want us to find the g prime, which is the derivative. So that's going to be negative 12x cubed plus a 2. And then lastly, 8.2.2, split this up. So 2x to the 4 over x squared plus 1 over x squared. Simplify that. You have 2x squared plus x to the negative 2, meaning that our dy dx should be a 4x minus a 2x to the negative 3. Okay, so that is how 8.2 and the whole of question 8 would have been approached. Move on to question 9. Sketched below is the graph of f of x. They gave us the equation. A, B, C are intercepts to the graph. Okay. And then from that, they are telling us that D and E will be the turning points of this graph. Then they want us to get the coordinates of E. So we know that E is the turning point, and for us to get the coordinates of the turning point, we always have to find the first derivative equated to 0. Okay, so that's going to be a 3x squared minus 16x plus a 5 is equal to 0. When I use my brackets, we have a 3x and x. For us to get a 5, it's just going to be a 5 and a 1. So 1, this is a 5. Let's use negatives everywhere. So meaning that x can be 1 over 3, or x can be a 5. But we're seeing that E is basically on the right-hand side, which is the positive side of the graph. So the 5 will favor it. Then let's look for f of 5, which is going to be 5 cubed minus 8 times 5 squared plus 5 times 5 plus a 14. And then this gives me a negative 36. Okay, so meaning that the coordinates of E will be 5 and negative 36. Then for which values of x is f concave down? So concave down is the second derivative. Okay, so our second derivative is going to be 6x minus 16 should be less than 0. Let's move the 16 that side. 6x is less than 16. Divide both sides by 6. X should be less than 8 over 3. Okay, so that is how we would have obtained those marks as well. And the 9.3, they want us to get the coordinate, the coordinates of B are 2 and 0. Okay, thank you. That is 2 and 0. And then use the graph to determine the value of x, for which f of x times the second derivative should be less or equal to 0. Now, before we even look at that, we're saying the graph can be a negative, the concavity can be positive. Or the graph will be positive, which means it's above the x-axis, and then the concavity to be negative. So we need to look at the two scenarios and identify which one really favors. So what I would do would be to obtain the coordinates of A, B, and C. And if I look at we can use the synthetic method, or you can use your division, the long division, to obtain that kind of thing. And so what I'm observing is that this A is going to be a negative 1. We have a 2, and then this is going to be a 7. Okay, so if that is the case, how are we going to represent this? So if the graph is concave, let's say down, okay, where is concave down? It is this region. And then the graph is above the x-axis, which is between -1 and the +2. So we're going to say that -1 is less x, is less 2. And then we're also seeing this scenario whereby, where do we look at the concave up? It is within this region here. And then concave up, but then the graph is below, which is between 2 and the 7. Okay, so since they're asking for the x values, we're going to say 2. Is it going to be a 2? It should be the, what do you call it? The point of inflection, which is 8/3 is less x, and then is less the 7. Okay, so that is how 9.3 would have been answered. Then for which values of t will the graph y negative 11x plus t intersect the graph? So if it's a negative gradient, simply means the graph or the line is moving in this sort of direction. So I'm going to make use of the local maxima and then the local minima to obtain those values of interest. Now, what I know is that E is having a 5 and a negative 36. What about my point D? Okay, so D, we say this was 1/3. If I substitute and find f of 1/3, it's going to be 1/3 cubed minus 8 times 1/3 squared. Is it plus a 5? Yes, plus a 5 times 1/3. And then lastly, you're adding a 14. Okay, so when I do that, I'm ending up with 400. So this is 1/3, and then 400/27. Okay, so having obtained that, we know, okay, or we believe that if my interest is this kind of scenario, this equation here, it needs to be equated to what I already have, meaning that I'm going to focus on the x value and the y value of this part, and then this entire thing, meaning that our y or our negative 11x plus t should be between a negative 36 and then the 400/27. So if I take the x to be a 5, for that matter, to be a negative 36 is less negative 11 multiplied by 5 plus a t should be less than 400/27. So then I have to move this 55 on either side. So negative 36 plus 55 gives me a 19 is less t. And then what is 400/27 plus 55? Okay, that gives me 1885/27. So that is what I'm looking at, or what I'm getting for that matter. Okay, if you use the 1/3, what will it give you? Will it give you more or less the same thing? I am not sure. So it's going to be negative 11/3. So negative 36 plus 11/3. That will give you a negative 97/3. Is less, t is less. Okay, we have 400 over the 27, but we are adding 11. No, we said negative 36 plus, plus 11/3. What's wrong with my maths today? Negative 36 plus 11/3 gives me that, and then 400/27 plus 11/3 gives me 499/27. All right, so that is how that question would have been approached. Question number 10, a rectangular metal sheet has dimensions x and h units, with x being greater than h and the perimeter is 50 units. This sheet is rolled into a cylinder with 2 open ends, top and the bottom. Then we have a height of h units. Now, one thing you need to remember is that before even we go forward, when you fold this, a half of the distance here, meaning that our radius is going to be a half of what? A half of x. That is number 1. 2, we were given the perimeter. okay, to say perimeter is a 50. But perimeter of a rectangle is the same as twice length plus twice width. Alternatively, you can say twice length plus the width. So I'm going to say that 50 is the same as twice into x plus h. Divide both sides by 2, meaning that x plus h gives us a 25. Now the question tells us to show that the volume of the cylinder is given as this. What don't we have here? We don't have h. So let's make h the subject. So it's a 25 minus x. All right, so if it's a 25 minus x, we know that the volume of a cylinder is given as pi radius squared times the height. Area of the base multiplied by the height. So our pi is a constant. We said our radius is a half of x. You're squaring that. The height is 25 minus x. So when you simplify half x squared, it's going to give us pi x squared over 4 into 25 minus x. Now let's open this up. So this multiplies with this multiplies with that. So this is going to give us 25 over 4 pi at x squared minus x squared, and x is going to give us x cubed. So it's going to be pi x cubed over 4. But now the question is showing something that is otherwise. What is the problem there? Because we have x squared over that. What did we do wrong? Because that is x. This is a pi. Show that the volume of the cylinder. Okay, what did we do wrong? What did we do wrong here? Because, okay, let me just rephrase this entire thing because probably I'm getting it twisted. Okay, because we must get that answer that we've been given, not the other way around. Okay, so let's do this. We know that this x is going to represent the circumference, which means this assumption is a bit wrong. Okay, circumference is given as twice pi radius. No? Our circumference is x. Okay, but we need the radius. So twice pi radius, meaning that the radius is going to be x over twice pi. Okay, now I see it makes sense. Okay, so let's see how we're gonna do the substitution now and say that volume is pi radius squared multiplied by the height. So it's a pi, say the radius is x over 2 pi, that is squared, multiplied by the height, which is a 25 minus x. So it's a pi x squared over 4 pi squared into 25 minus x. So pi and pi squared, 1 pi is going to cancel out. So it's going to be 25 with x squared over 4 pi minus this x, and that is going to give us x cubed over 4 pi. So I think that is what the question wanted. The other form was just the reverse, but the x doesn't make sense for it to be the radius. All right, then 10.2, calculate the value of x that will maximize the volume. So for this, if we have a 25x squared over 4 pi minus x cubed over 4 pi, we need to find the v by dx. So that's going to be 2 times 25x over 4 pi minus 3x squared over 4 pi. This should be equated to 0. But now, since the denominator is just the same, 4 pi, and we know that pi is a constant, we can multiply through by 4 pi, meaning that we have our 50x minus 3x squared should give us a 0. Then let's take out the x. This is going to be 50 minus 3x is equal to 0. So either x needs to be a 0 or 50 should be a 3x, and then x becomes a 50 over 3. All right, then question 11. A survey was conducted among female and male learners at a school about which type of cold drink they preferred. The data from the survey presented in the table below. The events smell and preferring juice are independent. Can we show that E is 84? So we know that male and juice is the same as male times the juice. So how many male learners enjoy juice? Yeah, 36. So 36 over the 210 is equivalent to how many males do we have? So we know that a 36 plus a 54 gives us a 90. That's going to be 90 over 210 times how many people enjoy juice? Do we know the numbers? Do we know the numbers? The answer is not really. Okay, so we're not sure of the numbers. So we're going to say E over the 210. So 210 is common everywhere. So we can multiply through by 210. Okay, meaning that times 210, and even this side times a 210. So the 210 cancels the 210. This 210 cancels 1 210. So we're going to have 36 is equivalent to 90 over 210. 90E over 210. Then let's multiply by 210, multiply by 210 again, or you can use a simpler approach to sort that out. So 210 times 36 gives me 7,560, and then I can divide both sides by 90. When I do that, my E becomes 84. All right, then calculate the probability that a female learner chosen at random from the group will like energy drinks. So how many female learners do we have? So we have 90. What is 210 minus a 90? That's going to be a 120. So we have a total of 120 female learners. But if this is 84, what is 84 minus a 36? It gives us 48 female learners that love juice. What is 120 minus 48? Gives us 72. So 72 learners that are females enjoy the energy drinks. So the answer here should be a 72 over 120. Okay, so 72 divided by 120 becomes a 0.6 or a 3.5. Okay, then 11.2. At a kiosk, 120 people buy either a cup of coffee or a bottle of water. The chance of rain on any given day is 0.75. The chance that a person buying a cup of coffee on a rainy day is 3 times the chance of a person buying coffee on a non-rain day. So if we are to use, let's say, a tree diagram for this, they're telling us that the probability of a person buying coffee on any given day is 7 over 12. So calculate the number of cups that will be sold on a non-rainy day. So this would be something like rainy and then maybe shiny. Somebody can buy coffee or you can buy water, coffee or water. So chances of rain is 0.75. Chances here will be 0.25. Now they told us that the chance of a person buying coffee on a rainy day is 3 times. So if this is X, then this must be 3X. Okay. Then the total for the coffee, knowing that rainy and coffee plus shiny and coffee must give us a 7 over 12. How do we go about that? We just multiply these outcomes, meaning that we're going to have a 0.75. Okay. So that is question 11.2. Okay, 11.2, we're saying 0.75 multiplied by the 3x plus, okay, this is going to be a 0.5 times x. So 0.25 multiplied by x should give us a 7 over 12. So 0.75 times 3 gives me a 2.25x plus a 0.25x should give me 7 over 12. I can divide this and give it as a decimal, but either way, no problem. Then when we plus this up, we're going to end up with a 2,5x is equal to 7 over 12. Then divide both sides by 2,5 divided by 2,5. Okay, so what is our x? So when I divide by 2,5, it gives me 7 over 30. So this is just the probability or the x value of getting the coffee. Now, since the question is asking for the number of coffee cups that will be sold on a non-rainy day. So non-rainy day is the value of x. So we're going to say 7 over 30 multiplied by the number of cups, which was 120. Okay, 7 over 30 multiplied by 120, I'm getting 28 cups that were basically sold on that day. All right, then 11.3, which is the last one. 8 runners compete in a race where there are no tied finishes. Okay, Bongi and Andrew are 2 of the competitors. Calculate the total number of possible ways in which the 8 runners can finish the race if Bongi finishes in a position immediately after Andrew. So if Bongi is finishing just after Andrew, it means that Bongi and Andrew are going to move just as a single unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these ones must move together, meaning that how many positions are we left with? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positions. So we're going to say 7 factorial. Okay, and we know that 7 factorial gives us 5, 0. Okay, and 4, 0. So that is what they needed for 11.3.1. Then 11.3.2, calculate the probability that 2 or more, in capital letters, 2 or more runners finish the race after Andrew and Bongi. Okay, now there are scenarios. Okay, 2 can finish, 3 can finish, 4 can finish, 5 can finish, 6 can finish, and so on and so forth. But Bongi and Andrew seem to be in fixed positions, meaning that instead of us having 7 positions, our focus is going to be the 6 places that we're going to play with. So what we're going to do is that in the first scenario, if it's only 2 people there, it's going to be 6 factorial divided by 6 minus 2 factorial plus 6 factorial over 6 minus 3 factorial if we have 3 people, and then we can have 6 factorial over 6 minus 4 factorial, and then 6 factorial over 6 minus 5 factorial, and then it's possible to have 6 members in between Bongi and Andrew, meaning 6 factorial over 6 minus 6 factorial. So let's see what total we get here first of all before we can look at the other thing. So 6 factorial, okay, is, we said it's a 720. Né? So meaning that 720 divided by 4 factorial, that gives me a 13, plus when I divide by 3 factorial, it's a 120, plus when I divide by 2 factorial, né? Yes, it's a 2 factorial, it's going to be a 620, and then 1 factorial is going to be a 720, and then that will also be a 720. So I just need to plus up all those numbers, 120 plus 360 plus the 720, and then plus another 720. Okay, so this is giving me 1950, okay, as my final output. Now, with this 1950 as outputs, I need to also find out how many people can I rearrange. Since there are 8, remember the positions can vary. What is 8 factorial? So we know that 8 factorial gives us a 320. Now, if I'm to look at all the positions and whatever we have to use, okay, we have to just divide what we have and then obtain the answer. So the probability, I'll say, is 950 over 320. When I punch that into the calculator, so 1950 divided by 320, that gives me a 0.0484. All right, guys, so that brings us to the end of the paper, okay? And I thank you guys for following. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing. And I wish you guys all the best in your preparation for paper 2. So let's meet then when we meet. Bye-bye.